I think Chinedu's strategy was to take all the allocated time so that he can get the $1 million up front, the $100 million. All right, thank you so much for the discussion to the first panel. And Kashif, thank you so much for the moderation. As a banker who goes through lots of investment committee due diligence processes that are extremely manual and hours of putting information together and running models, I think the next speaker is definitely someone who's come up with a solution that a lot of finance, legal, and people from various spheres of life will identify with here. His name is Preston Ideh. He's the co-founder and CEO of Stears, an African startup that focuses on data and insights, which enables quick, accurate decisions for both financial and operational opportunities. The company's mission is to become the world's most trusted source of African data and insights to global businesses, finance, and policy professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Preston.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Great, thank you all for joining this session. I hope by the end that you're able to understand as deeply as we do why the problem we're solving, data, is an important one to solve and what our solution looks like. So each and every one of us here is probably facing the same challenge right now. We're all trying to take advantage of the opportunities on the continent, opportunities in Africa, the investment opportunities. But one of the most consistent and pervasive challenges that absolutely everyone faces, whether you're an investor, whether you're an operator, regardless of your sector, is access to data, access to trusted, reliable data. And that's basically why we exist. So Stears' mission, like mentioned earlier, is really to solve that problem, to close that data gap for businesses, for investors, for operators, really across the value chain on the African continent. And how we do that really is by both collecting data, that's third-party data from different sources, whether they're official sources, or we actually use our own tools to collect our own proprietary data. So that means running our own surveys, building our own models, building our own analytic tools, basically to answer the same questions. And that's a very important part of the data problem, I would say, because many people, when they're reminded about the African data problem, talk about trust. They talk about reliability of data that's currently available. In our case, we don't just take data from third-party sources, we also bring our own data, right? And that's a big part of the business because we have to go through the process of also creating our own data. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I'm talking about our solutions. But it's important to sort of see the big picture here and why what we're doing right now is so important for the continent. So I think one important question to be able to answer right now is who's currently benefiting from the data we're collecting our services. And we could put them into four major buckets. Financial services, I think that's a very easy one for everyone to figure out. Lots of banks, investment banks, asset managers, people who effectively have to allocate capital on a day-to-day basis need that data, and they're currently customers at Stears. Global corporates, so one of the things we found, particularly for multinationals, is they're heavily affected by a lot of macro trends. I think for most of the panels I've listened in on today, we've highlighted the importance of the macroeconomic factors on the African continent. For those people who do business in Nigeria, I think recently we saw the devaluation and the impact that had on sort of revenues from companies and all the sort of long-term plans that both investors and operators had. And so we have quite a number of global corporates who actually rely on our perspective, rely on our data, rely on our insights to basically navigate or see around the corner. And of course, professional services, lots of consultants who have to assist their clients to better understand Africa, to better understand the market. That's also a big opportunity. And finally, at DFIs, So particularly what we found is lots of development organizations, development institutions who want to, achieve their project goals, deliver on their mandates, need reliable data. Many times it's custom data. Many times it's data that they want to collect from the ground up, and we're able to help them get that data and effectively sort of provide it to them in a way that they can extract insight from. And I'll just briefly talk about our solutions, because this is also important to understand what does this data look like. So I think the easiest one to understand is, economic research and industry analysis. We are macro focused, but we also have key industries that we focus on, the likes of energy, digital economy, consumer goods. These are sort of core industries that we've seen are quite important for the African continent. But of course, like I said earlier, the macro is also quite big, so we do a lot of analysis there as well. Forecasts. Now, one thing that has become highly demanded recently, especially with some of the volatility we've seen on the African continent, is people want to understand what's going to happen next, right? That's fundamentally at the core of most people making decisions around how to allocate capital. And our forecasts are a very important part of that. So we don't just rely on sort of the standard statistical models or, econometrics. We're actually leveraging technology there. And most of the models we built recently, when I talk particularly about market opportunities and market sizing, we also leverage machine learning and basically anything that allows us to be more accurate when it comes to figuring out what's going to happen before it happens. So those sort of core macroeconomic indicators, whether that's GDP, inflation, and these are sort of core things that underlie, our investment, and we are able to provide that as well. I've just heard the sort of bell there, so I will sort of speak to two things in particular, and that's particularly around market opportunities mapping. So I think the biggest question we often get from our customers is, what is the potential revenue? What is the potential opportunity in this, vertical, in that industry, right? And having heard that question over and over again, we're able to start building a solution that actually answers that. Now, specifically, we started with financial services, and the sub-vertical within financial services is credit. I think most people appreciate that availability of credit, availability of finance is a big need on the African continent. And what we did there is we combined industry data, we combined our own proprietary data, and of course, we partner with organizations like Athena, which is a financial inclusion data provider, to effectively build our own models on a macro level and a micro level, right, to help people understand how revenue especially is going to sort of change depending on underlying factors. And I think factors are quite key here, because most times when people are talking about market sizing, they're thinking about a specific number, 10 billion, 100 billion, right? Our approach to market opportunities and market sizing is to identify the underlying variables, the underlying factors that can actually shape the size of the market, right? That can effectively unleash potential. And by looking at that, we're able to also provide multiple scenarios. So that gives you a sense of, what happens if inflation keeps going at this rate, right? What does that actually mean for my industry, right? Or what if it's a different risk, for instance, geopolitical risk, right? So by focusing on the underlying variables and the underlying factors, our approach generally to market sizing and market opportunities is quite distinct. And across the board, just generally, with our solution and our services, right, we are able to always go a step deeper, because from our perspective, a lot of the views of the African market of specific countries, whether it's Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, right, are very high level. They're sort of top down, and our approach is very bottoms up in terms of building our own solution and building our models. And last thing I'll talk about, which we've seen particularly important for decision makers, expert network service. And basically what that means is getting the opportunity to interact with the people who have a sort of deep domain expertise and an understanding of that market, whether it's a sort of value chain, looking at it from end to end, or even unpacking one of our solutions, right? So, I talked about the models earlier and all the analytics. Getting the opportunity to actually sit down or have presentations from people who are involved in pulling together these solutions is something we also do quite a bit of. And I think that's a very brief conversation. I know I have just a minute or so left, but one thing I just sort of want to leave everyone with is that as far as investment in Africa is concerned, we are enablers. That's how we see ourselves. That's how we see our role in the larger sort of investment space. And making sure that people have reliable, trusted, verified data is really why we exist. And our hope is that we can help each and every one of you to solve the problem for yourselves as well. Thank you very much.